So finding free stuff being given away can be extremely rewarding financially if you choose to sell it off. But it also gives you the opportunity to make good use of your time as well, that is if you have any extra to give. But it's not always a positive experience as with this mower because as you're going to see, I thought I had a winner with this one. But once I got a closer look at it, turns out it's going to cost me more money than I thought. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this BlackMax lawnmower, and the problem is that I just picked it up and I'm not really sure what's wrong with it. But by the way the mower looks, there's a good possibility that it's not going to start. Now, I'm going to try and repair this lawnmower, but yours might be different, so this might not work on yours. So if things are not working out for you, like in the video, please ask about it. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Now, I found this lawnmower by using a free app where people give away unused items that they simply don't want anymore. And by the way the pull handle looks on this one, I can get a sense of how this mower was taken care of. Now, I'm not the type of person to look a gift horse in the mouth, so when I get something for free, I'm not going to ask them 20 questions, I'm just going to grab it and then leave. However, besides this mower being a bit dirty, it looks to be in great condition, so I have to wonder, why would they even let it go? And even if this mower turns out to be a giant pile of scrap metal, at least we'll be able to salvage some gasoline from the tank along with any other good parts. Now, the other issue that I noticed about this lawnmower, besides the pull handle being broken, is that the recoil is extremely slow to pull the rope back in. On Hondas, if they're used in dusty conditions, the springs sometimes needs to be cleaned to get them to work again. So to get ready to take the recoil off, I'm going to spray some lube on the nuts to make them easier to take off. So it turns out the oil is in pretty good condition. However, after checking the oil level, come to find out there's almost a quart of oil in there, which on this engine is just way too much. Now, if the oil was in really bad condition, I would just completely empty it and then put the correct amount back in, but since it's not that bad, I'm just going to drain out the extra oil instead. Then once we get the engine started and running and get the oil good and hot, we'll then do a proper oil change. Just remember on Honda engines, when you're checking the oil level, only press the dipstick against the fill tube. Now that we know the oil level is right where it needs to be, I think enough time has passed by that we can take the nuts off the recoil assembly. Now, if the nuts do get stuck, they're going to end up taking out the stud from the engine, which can be a real pain to put back in. So if we get a closer look at where the spring is located at in the recoil, you can see a lot of dirt around the area. This pretty much confirms that the spring is also going to be covered in dirt as well, and it'll need to be cleaned to get the recoil to work again. Now, you can try to clean the spring area with some carb cleaner if it's not that bad. And as you can see, after the first round of cleaning, the rope was now able to wind itself back into the recoil. However, after more rounds of cleaning, we can see that there's a lot more dirt coming from the spring area. Now, even though it's 100 times better than it was before, to make sure that it's completely clean, I think it'd be best to take the spring out for a physical cleaning instead. And in the meantime, I'm going to replace the recoil with a loaner from a spare engine. That way we can try and start the engine if we really need to. Now, why don't I just use this one instead of the other one? Well, as you can see, the cover is missing the metal guide, and that's allowing the rope to cut into the cover. So until I can find another metal guide for this recoil, it's only going to be used as a backup until then. Now, since we know the oil level was much too high, it could also mean that this engine was burning oil that had made it past the rings. And if that's the case, the spark plug is going to have a lot of carbon on it, and if it does, we'll either need to clean it off or replace it. And as you can see, it not only has a lot of carbon on it, but it's also wet with oil. Now, replacing this aftermarket spark plug with an OEM one is going to cost us a couple of bucks, but before we do that, it's worth a shot to at least try and clean it. Now, you can use carb cleaner or a very strong solvent to try to clean off the carbon, but I'm going to use a torch followed by a wire brush. Now, for your information, a new OEM spark plug from an online supplier is about $6 before taxes. So you're not going to save a lot of money. However, if you do this kind of work for a living, being able to save a dozen spark plugs from the trash will add up. Now, before we reinstall the spark plug, I want to check and make sure that the air gap on the ground is where it needs to be, which it was. So as I just told you, the spark plug that came from the engine was not original. In fact, it's an aftermarket one that I don't really care for. But since I don't know if it has a starting problem yet, I'm going to put it back into the engine and then we're going to try and start it. Also, since I'm not sure if the carb is in working condition, I'm going to physically prime the engine with gasoline instead. Now that was a very interesting start, but it does prove that the engine has spark and enough compression to run. However, since the engine did not stay running, it's telling me that the carb will need to be looked at. What's also very interesting is that the air filter looks to be somewhat brand new, and besides the oil that's on the edge of the seal, there's hardly any dirt on it. So what are my plans for this recoil then? Well, first off, I need to replace the handle, but the other issue is that I think the rope is a little bit too short. So my plan is to replace the rope and handle from a parts machine that I already have on hand. I'm also going to carefully take the spring out to give it a proper cleaning along with some light lube. Now, being the cheapskate that I am, I'm not going to throw away this rope because it could be used on a different machine. That means I'm trying not to damage the rope any more than I have to, and that's the reason why I took off the metal guide in the cover. Also, the screw for the recoil is left-hand thread, meaning it's backwards from a regular screw. So to remove this screw, I had to turn it clockwise instead of the other direction. So once the screw is gone, be very careful when taking out the pulley because the spring can come flying out. Now before I clean the spring, I'm also going to clean the dirt and grease from the cover. So after giving it a quick cleaning, we can now see why the spring gets so dirty. The cover is where air to cool the engine comes from, so if you're mowing an area with little grass and mainly dirt, it makes sense. So this is when things get a little scary. This spring can unwind and hurt you if you're not ready, so use a lot of care and caution when handling it, and of course wearing some kind of eye protection would be recommended as well. Of course, if we had to clean the dirt from the cover, it also makes sense to clean the dirt from the pocket where the spring was sitting. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not an overly clean person, but when dirt and grime gets in the way of stuff working the way that it should, I'm all in for a good cleaning. So I'm just using carb cleaner and some paper towels to clean the spring, but there are more ways to do this job though. Now if the spring also had some minor rusting on it, I would then use a Scotch-Brite pad or maybe even some fine sandpaper. So after a couple of rounds of cleaning, the spring is now much better, and next comes the hard part. This is the part where you have to wind the spring back up, and if you've never done this before, be prepared for a lot of failed attempts. Now there are tools you can get from online retailers to make this job a whole lot easier, and to be honest, as the years go by, this part gets harder on my hands, so I might have to invest on one of those tools. Once you get the spring to the correct size so it can fit into the pocket, carefully install it in the correct direction. Now on this one, it only really fits one way, however on other models it might be tougher to figure out which way to install it. After that, I'll then spray on a light lubricant, but it's not needed, however it couldn't hurt either. I'm also going to spray some lithium grease in a few choice locations to yet again help keep the spring well lubricated. Now the next tough part is making sure that the end of the spring grabs onto its anchor in the cover. So once we know the end of the spring is anchored, we can start to put the recoil back together and hopefully it works, otherwise we'll have to go with a different plan that's going to cost us some money. So after turning the recoil a couple of times, it seems to be working just like it should be, which means we can start the process of installing the used rope and handle. Now the easiest way to do this is to wind the spring first and then install the rope into the pulley. Of course you can do it the other way around, but I will say that turning the pulley with the rope is a real pain to do, so I do like doing it this way better. Now to start off, I put 4 turns on the spring before installing the rope into the opening in the pulley and then putting a knot in it. However, after I installed the rope and let it wind all of it onto the pulley, I then decided to add 2 more turns before going on. So in the future, I'd recommend that you put 6 turns on the pulley and then install the rope, and if that turns out to be too many turns, well, taking out turns is a lot easier than adding them. Of course, I'm going to give this very gross looking mower a quick cleaning because I made quite the mess when I drained out some of the oil from the engine. And for those of you who might ask, I'm going to be using a very strong degreaser from my favorite freight store. Just be very careful when using this degreaser because it has the ability to damage paint if you leave it on there for too long. So before you use it, make sure you read the instructions and the safety information, otherwise you could have a bad day. Now I've used several other types of degreasers and even stale gasoline to clean with, but this stuff is the easiest to use by far. Now the paint on this mower was pretty rough to begin with, but I still don't want to make it any worse. Now at this point, if I had to guess as to the reason why this mower was given away, I could only guess it was because it wouldn't start. However, it not starting could be a secondary result from sitting for a year or two because of a different issue though. But at this stage, I haven't seen any other problems that would point to a better reason than a no-start condition. That is, until we get to the cover for the self-propel belt. Once out of the way, we can see that the belt is gone. So does that mean there's a problem with the drive system and they felt that removing the belt was the next best thing to do? Unfortunately, without a belt, we won't be able to test out that theory, but finding a replacement shouldn't be a big deal. So we're almost done with the cleaning, and the last part we have to take care of is under the engine cover. The reason this is important is because if the cooling vents are blocked with dirt or grass, it could cause the engine to overheat. And for those of you who might ask, you don't need to clean under here all that often, but since I've never seen this mower before today, I need to make sure that the cooling fins are not blocked. Now luckily, it's not that bad under here, and all we have to do is wash away some dirt that's collected in a couple of places. Now normally I would allow the water to dry off before I put the cover back on, but it's not always necessary. The reason why is because it's warm enough that any water left on the mower should evaporate pretty quickly, especially when sitting in direct sunlight. Now if you're in a real hurry and don't have time to wait for it to dry, then consider using some compressed air or even a leaf blower to help dry off the water. Now as for this one, it only took about 10 minutes for the majority of the water to dry off. So after looking at this mower and hearing the engine run, it sounds to be in great health. So my only guess is that the self-propel was having some issues and they removed the belt to not cause any further issues with it. And by the way this one looked, when we first got it, it had to have been in storage for quite some time, so there's a good chance that they had already bought a new mower to replace this one and just decided to get some space back. Either way, once we get a belt for this mower, we'll then be able to figure out what kind of issues the drive system has, and then we'll try to fix it if we need to. So I haven't decided if I'm going to sell this mower or keep it for myself just yet. And even though this is not a Honda mower, it at least has a Honda engine, which even though isn't ideal, it should still last a long time with yearly maintenance. And with the cost of new mowers being well over $400, this might make for a great backup to my existing Honda. So my question is, would you keep this mower as a backup or even as your main mower, or would you sell it instead? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.